So my research is in the Fremont, and the Fremont occupied a space of what is roughly modern-day Utah from about AD 400 to AD 1300. So a huge area and a long period of time, and these people were really diverse. In fact, their diversity has made them really difficult to understand in a way that's really fun for archaeologists. So they engaged in different ways of getting their food, for example. Some people were farmers, some people were hunters and gatherers. And one thing that they had in common was their iconography. Within the same period of time and across all of Utah, people all of a sudden said, we're going to start drawing the human form a lot more. Where mostly for thousands of years before, maybe we had had just swirls and really abstract things, suddenly and very quickly and all across the place, people were drawing human figures, and they were drawing them with a lot of specialized jewelry on them. So I've been working in northeastern Utah looking at this specialized stuff and trying to figure out who people were. So when we first walk up to a site, it can be very confusing. What we're seeing is kind of a jumble of different layers of people coming up to the site, leaving their mark, and then leaving. Again, remember, the Fremont were here for almost 1,000 years. So at this site that we're looking at, we're seeing different layers of people coming and leaving their mark.
So, tiny little obsidian projectile point.
And at this site too, we were focusing on human figures, anthropomorphs or anthros, and so that's what we're seeing here. And we're really only seeing even a part of them, right? What we're seeing is one method of making these human figures, which is what we call indirect percussion, or a hammer and chisel method. People were probably also painting. People were using chalk and ochre and charcoal, all sorts of things to create a wide array of colors to show off all the cool stuff they were wearing. And we're thinking that within all of this diversity across time, if we just take it in one area, we should be able to tease apart patterns in what people are wearing that are going to align with patterns of who people were, right? What their occupations were, what their cultural affiliations or linguistic affiliations were, what they were all about, who they were to themselves and to their society. I mentioned that there's a lot of different colors, but also that it's been roughly 1,000 years, so naturally those paints have washed away. The only thing that we're really getting are these dots that graphically for us, we depicted using a technique called pointillism. So we drew little eensy beensy dots every time we saw a dot on the wall. And we were able to take a look at the individual anthropomorphs and try to see what is connected to what. Whose eyes go to whose necklace, go to whose belt. And so once we had figured that out, then we were able to go back and see the layering. Okay, whose belt is on top of whose necklace, right? And in most cases, we were able to figure it out. It was a lot of work, to be honest. It was thousands of hours, but really worth it because now we have a massive database from art, which is incredible. So we have 500 anthropomorphs, and we can start to really learn something about people from this. So I'm an archaeologist, but what I'm not is indigenous or in any way a descendant of the people who created all of this amazing rock imagery. So it's not appropriate for me to try to interpret it. And a lot of people try to do that. They want to walk up to a wall of prehistoric rock imagery or historic rock imagery and say, ah, here's what was going on. Here's the story behind it. And the fact is, we may not be privy to that. That information quite likely is known, but it doesn't always get shared, and it doesn't need to, right? That can be private to some people's cultural experiences. But what we can do is use math and science to understand more about the people behind the imagery. Not what the imagery means, but what the humans were doing, what they were like, who they were. And so we're going to use the rock imagery that we see. We're going to take information and classify all the different types of jewelry, face paint, headdresses, clothing, body paint, all this stuff. We're going to classify it and then tabulate it so that we can run statistics on it. We're, in our research, going to be doing complicated statistics like principal component analysis or a factor analysis, but even doing something as simple as understanding the modes, what is the average appearance of people, that's helpful too. So even just characterizing the data set should help us to classify the rock imagery enough that we may learn, oh, this is earlier than this one, or there's a different geographic spread between them. There's a lot we're going to learn just from essentially fancy counting. So we're already learning so much. Our analysis isn't finished, but from what we've already started to glean, we think we're seeing patterns that are testable hypotheses. So we think we're seeing differences in necklace types specifically that are going to show earlier and later than, because with the necklaces we see really nicely layered information on those. And if we can tie those necklaces to different headdresses, we think we're seeing different cultural influences on headdresses and masks. So we should be able to then tie our temporal differences to cultural change. And what we're thinking is maybe different migrations of different groups or different people determining that now is a good time to draw rock imagery for whatever reason. Now is a good time to invest in this sort of artistic expression. So again, as an archaeologist who's not indigenous herself, I need to be accountable to the tribes when I do this work. So my next step, once I have some of my data digested and analyzed, is I'd like to take this to the tribes, to tribal councils, to tribal elders, and say, here's what we're learning. Is this meaningful to you? And if it is, what questions would you like to have answered? And invite them into that scientific process and work with tribes as genuine collaborators right from the start. It's not always easy to do this. Archaeology doesn't have a stellar history inviting descendant communities in to make this knowledge. But it's our responsibility as archaeologists and as scientists in general to make this not only accessible to everyone, but meaningful to everyone, and especially to our descendant communities. This project is incredible. This, and along with some of the work of my colleagues and my collaborators, we're going to start understanding in a new way who were the Uinta Fremont. Instead of seeing these people in the northeastern corner of Utah as one unit of people, right? Instead of thinking of people as from this school, from this grade, we're going to start seeing people for who they are, right? We're going to start seeing people who are interested in gymnastics, people who are vegetarian, people who have curly hair, right? We're going to start seeing the people behind this in a way that we've never really seen before here in the Fremont world. So it's incredible. It's such a great time to be an archaeologist, and I just can't wait for our next steps.